Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to our live stream event, Resisting Cop City and Corporate Power. We're absolutely thrilled to have all of you joining us today from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You've made the right choice to come here because we've got an exciting and thought-provoking discussion ahead. On what we believe, I personally believe, is one of the most important actions and resistance to corporate power happening in the country right now. You might be wondering why we're hosting this live stream. Well, let me tell you, today we stand together in solidarity in protecting the Weelaunee Forest and against Cop City and the rising influence of corporate power in our communities. We believe it's crucial to address these issues head on, and this live stream is a perfect platform for us to connect, to learn, and to strategize on how we can create positive change. And you'll be able to hear firsthand from our distinguished speaker, who is one of Stop Cop City's powerful leaders on the ground. But before we dive into the good stuff, let's go ahead and set some ground rules to ensure we have a respectful and inclusive space for everyone. Well, number one is be respectful. We all come from different backgrounds and perspectives, and it's essential to teach each other and to treat each other with kindness and understanding. Rule number two, share your juicy questions for the Q&A time in the chat. We want to make sure to address as many of your burning questions as possible. So hold on to them. As they come up, put them in the chat and we can share them with our guest speaker at the time. And lastly, rule number three, help us spread the word. This is an incredible opportunity to make a difference, and we want to reach as many hearts and minds as possible. So go ahead, share this live stream with your friends and family. Let's make this movement go viral. Now, to get things rolling, we have a quick little 2-minute video clip that'll kind of give us a rundown on what Cop City is and what it's all about. And trust me, you don't want to miss this. So sit back, relax, and let's get this started. Once again, thank you for being here. Your presence and engagement are what's going to make this community strong and vibrant. Together, we can make a real impact and create the world that values justice and fairness and unity. Now, without further ado, Alfonso, if you can hit the play button and watch the video.
My very ancestors for thousands upon thousands of years are growing in the trees and are in the ground around us. And when we see something like a Cop City attempting to be built, no way is that congruent with the energies of life that brings us all together.
Our elected officials have said over and over again, well, now that we've voted, there's nothing we can do to stop it. And that is simply not true. The lease, the agreement between the city and the Atlanta Police Foundation can be broken. This piece of property is outside of the city limits of the city of Atlanta. It's actually in a neighboring county, DeKalb County. That means that the people that are the most affected by this project, the people that will have the forest that they live around destroyed, that will have to deal with helicopters flying overhead, live ammunition, ongoing protests, those people are being disenfranchised because they cannot directly appeal to their elected officials because this project is in a county and is not attached to the city.
This is an opportunity for forces to come together across the country and show our resistance because they're not going to do this on our watch.
When the vote happened to approve this project in 2021, over 1,000 people showed up to give public comment, and the vast majority of them, 70%, opposed the project. But they voted to approve the project anyway. When you tell your constituents that they can't vote, that they can't make calls, they can't knock on doors, of course they take to the streets to protest.
Hi, I'm Shelley Williams. I'm one of the national co-directors of Move to Amend, and here to kind of introduce who we are and why this is really important to us to lift up what's going on the ground in Atlanta right now. So many of you probably found this by knowing who we are, but just to make crystal clear, we are a coalition of hundreds of organizations and hundreds of thousands of individuals committed to social and economic justice, ending corporate rule, and building a vibrant democracy that is genuinely accountable to the people and not corporate interests. And the primary principles and values that guide our work are anti-oppression and solidarity organizing, coalition and movement building, grassroots organizing, dedication to political education, and political and economic independence. And it is these very values that bring us here today to talk with our friend Kamau Franklin from Community Movement Builders about the movement to stop Cop City. Because what is happening in Atlanta does impact all of us. This training ground would not only be used by Atlanta police, it would be utilized by police departments across the United States, where the urban warfare skills they develop there would be taken back to their own communities and used against their own people. And what is happening in Atlanta has so much to teach us, because despite the system being fully stacked against this movement, we are seeing this movement winning. Like the movement to abolish corporate constitutional rights, one of the special things about the movement to stop Cop City is how it's bringing together so many fronts of struggle. It's bringing together abolitionists, the environmental justice movement, anti-gentrification movement, the land back movement, because the original inhabitants of this land, the Muskogee people who were violently displaced to Oklahoma so long ago, are returning to their ancestral land to fight for it. And even regular people who may not consider themselves radicals, but who value local democracy and are witnessing with their own eyes that in this system, it just doesn't exist. It doesn't matter how many people flood the city council meetings into the wee hours of the morning in opposition. It doesn't matter how many signatures are gathered. At the end of the day, these elected officials are not beholden to those they supposedly represent, but to the Atlanta Police Foundation and the countless corporations who are lining these elected officials' pockets and who desperately want this facility to be built so that they can grow more sophisticated in their violence and tactics to suppress us. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my fellow national co-director, Greg Coleridge.
Well, greetings, everyone. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce Kamau Franklin to you. You probably, when registered, saw the lengthy and impressive description of his background and bio. I'm not going to go over that, just going to say something very briefly. I had an opportunity to work with Kamau as a fellow employee of the American Friends Service Committee quite a number of years ago. He in the Atlanta region, me in the Midwest region. Didn't have all that many direct connections to him, but know enough about him and certainly have followed what has gone on in the Cop City effort and the movement, in fact, to know that while there are many, many leaders of that effort and tremendous work, and certainly he is one of those leaders, he is more than that. He is an enabler, as I call it, a person who, as a individual, is working to help others understand their strengths and work together to help them gain their own confidence, skills, abilities, and strategic understanding of what is needed to go forward. Not the only one, to be sure, but a very important enabler among many, and one of the more important ones, I would think, looking at it from the outside, who is doing the work strategically to help this movement grow and to not only see what's happening now, but to give some consideration to what will take place after their victory is achieved. So with that, very happy to welcome Kamau Franklin. Greetings.
Greetings. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And feel free to make some comments about the work of what is going on, your impression of the developments that are taking place, 10, 15 minutes, however long you feel to just sort of lay out the current conditions and where things may be headed, and as well, what we can do from our particular vantage point to help out. Certainly nationally, we do have some people on the ground in the Atlanta area.
Well, I think we're at an important juncture or step in terms of the battle to stop Cop City. We're at a stage where, as part of the introduction talked through, we've had several opportunities to try to persuade the city council to not put this through. Record numbers of people have turned out at city council on 2 different occasions. A record number of call-ins before that when this was first voted on. The city council time and time again has ignored the voice of the people. And when I say record numbers, I'm talking about literally thousands of people showing up at City Hall, hundreds signed up to speak. And of those who signed up to speak in the first hearing at City Hall, 0 spoke in favor. And at the second one, the city planted 3 people, but even that was not enough to drown out the well over 200 to 300 people who spoke against Cop City. Through all of that, the city council, the mayor, the Atlanta Police Foundation, the Atlanta Police, now the Georgia, the governor of Georgia, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, have all conspired to make Cop City happen, despite the call on the ground to stop it from happening. And so we're at this juncture where they've passed the resources necessary to have it. They've gotten all their permissions that they needed to build it. We're at the place now where we are offering a referendum. I say offering because what we want is to have the people of Atlanta to have the final say in whether or not this structure gets built. It is the people who need to decide whether or not there's a Cop City. We are confident, based on our own internal polling, based on our grassroots efforts, that the people of Atlanta have never asked for Cop City and do not want Cop City to take place. So we are now in the middle of a battle to have a referendum put on the ballot in November, possibly in March of 2024. But our desire is this November for it to be a part of the next upcoming election, where the people in Atlanta get to vote themselves directly for not having Cop City. In the midst of that, other organizing and activism continues to happen. There continues to be demonstrations, civil disobedience, direct action, banner drops. That work continues not only here in Atlanta, but all across the country. Folks have been doing different kinds of work, including showing up at corporate headquarters, doing banner drops again, specifically targeting developers to try to get them to pull out of the project. These are ongoing activities that have been there since the very beginning. And even as this referendum process is going through, those organizing activities are still going. On the ground, we're collecting literally at this stage, hundreds of thousands of dollars of money, even to be able to push and get this referendum done. And that shows the type of support we've received. When this campaign or this work to stop Cop City started over 2 years ago, it was a band of political organizers, to be honest, folks who deeply understood that Cop City was a reaction to the movement against police violence in our communities. When in 2020, Rashad Brooks was killed here in Atlanta, George Floyd was killed, Breonna Taylor was killed, there was a movement of millions of people across the country who called for reforming of the police. They called for everything from abolishing the police to defunding the police to finding alternatives to public safety. And instead, what we've had here in Atlanta was a doubling down of the same police tactics that led to the uprisings in the first place. A doubling down of the police tactics and to the largesse of the police to let them do 2 things. One was to continue the over-policing that brought us to the crisis level that we reached. 2 was now to target the very organizers and activists who are calling for alternatives to public safety and to policing, that those organizers and activists were targeted, not only here in Atlanta, but across the country with different laws, trying to bring civil penalties for organizers and activists, additional criminal penalties. And now here in Atlanta, In addition to trying to stop this movement and stop the organizers from doing this work, they've now brought domestic terrorism charges against organizers and activists who've done this work. And they've targeted bail funds which have been around for hundreds of years, or over 100 years, I should say, in support of organizing and activism. The bail fund we have here in Atlanta has been around for upwards of 8 years, even prior to the struggle against Cop City, supporting the movement work of folks here who, if they were getting arrested, they were guaranteed an opportunity to get out of jail, to fight their cases outside of jail, right? And this has historical ramifications, and it's really important to understand. During the civil rights movements, bail funds became extremely important. They were the thing that allowed working class and poor people to fully participate in movement activities, because they didn't have to have the fear of sitting in Southern segregationist jails overnight as they protested for their rights and their liberties. We have now reached a point where the so-called liberal Democratic mayor, black mayor of Atlanta, and the racist right-wing white Republican governor have teamed up forces and basically enacted segregationist strategies to stop the movement of Cop City. So we are asking people all around the country and across the world to support the movement to stop Cop City. If you go on communitymovementbuilders.org website, you'll see plenty of ways to be involved in disinvestment campaigns, again, to be involved in targeting corporations who are funding this, still being involved in calling city council, calling mayors, doing actions in front of the corporate headquarters, the banks who are giving loans to these places. There are many ways for folks to get involved in helping to stop Cop City. This fight is not over, but we are definitely at a critical juncture where we need as much support as possible, both inside Atlanta and outside, to make sure that Cop City doesn't happen.
That is an impressive description of the multifaceted movement that is going on. And so before we get to questions, please do share questions or comments. We will post them and ask them. I do have one question that has come in. It's actually from Move to Amend itself. It says, here at Move to Amend, we believe in a diverse, you touched on this. Just want you to sort of extrapolate, if you might. We believe in a diversity of tactics, as Shelley mentioned. We understand direct action, civil disobedience, and community building are going to be necessary for the changes we want to see happen. But at the same time, we also are working within it along the way. Within the system we know is fully stacked against us and still exhausting every available tool. Can you talk about the diversity of tactics? You've already done a bit. Being employed in the movement to stop Cop City, and the inside-outside approach, and why all of it is so important.
Yeah, since the very beginning of the struggle, we understood the larger group of folks who've been organizing together, loosely organizing together. You know, we don't have a formal coalition. What we have is, as stated, a diversity of tactics and an understanding that we will support and protect each other during this struggle. Because we understand also that if we just depended on one tactic or one strategy, that the system would continue to do what it does best, which would be to rail against us or put all its forces against us. Making sure that folks understand that they just don't have to work within the system to make changes, that voting through the so-called democratic process is not the only way to make changes, that asking politely for policy changes by the same elected officials who are brought off by corporations, brought off by developers, who are influenced by an ideological system that tells them any corporate endeavor is a good thing, and any amount of money given to police solves issues of public safety, which it doesn't, means that we could be potentially banging our head up against a wall if that was the only strategy that we use or the only tactic that we use. So very early on, the idea of using tactics that were not strictly something condoned by the city, but doing everything that we thought possible in terms of civil disobedience, town halls, direct action, and again, even sabotaging equipment that we know we're going to be used to destroy and tear down the forest. that all of that was acceptable within the range of ideas that we had put forth or that people had put forth to do, and that we would support, and that we would not allow the corporate media to separate us into good organizers and bad organizers, into good activists and bad activists, into folks who did it the right way, even if that meant nothing would move, and to folks who did it the wrong way. So we kept that pledge to each other, even though, again, we did not know what people were doing and when they would do it and how they would do it. We understood that a diversity of tactics would be something that would be useful in building the strength of this movement, and it has. When we've used the tactics of town halls and going to City Hall, and when we exhausted those tactics, the idea of the forest defenders, after the ordinance was passed to give the lease, to get permission to sign the lease, the idea of forest defenders was born, where folks actually lived in the forest, where they stayed in tree huts, where they did concerts or they did different events, where they asked their fellow comrades to come and stay with them in the forest from time to time. That was the tactic that kept the movement alive and allowed it to grow and to gain the space that it needed to become this national and international movement it is right now. So it is the diversity of tactics that allowed us to even make sure that this got saw outside of Atlanta, that this got seen outside of Georgia. So we understand that that is something that all movements should really think through, and not allow the very same people who are oppressing you or stopping you from gaining your rights to tell you how to fight back, when they themselves use a diversity of tactics every and any chance they get.
Absolutely true in terms of the other side using anything at their disposal. Any other questions that have come in? And Alfonso, maybe if you could put, when you have a chance, the Community Builders website. Yeah, share questions or concerns. We'll try to get to all of them. And we will try to get that website link up. So there it is, website. Maybe we can, there we go. And what will you find at your website again?
At the website, particularly when it deals with Cop City, you'll find different strategies and tactics that people across the country can be engaged in. That includes targeting the different corporations which are putting in resources, and these are multinational corporations, everything from Delta to Waffle House to Home Depot to the Cox Industries. These are worldwide corporations. These are not just Atlanta-based corporations. And so that's what makes this such an issue that has national, if not international, phenomena in terms of the concern that people should have for it. As again stated, 40% of the police officers to be trained at Cop City will not be a Georgia police officer or Atlanta police officers. They will be police officers from around the country. So they will be training and strategies and tactics, again, on the continued over-policing of our communities, and on working against movements that were brought out of fighting against police violence. So they'll find information on the developers, on the contractors, on the corporations, on what city council folks to be in touch with. We also have another website, copcityvote.com, where people can learn more about the referendum process, how they can get involved, how they can donate resources. We just won a major victory in the court system, where the judge threw out the part of the referendum law that says that only people in Atlanta could collect signatures. Now anybody who lives in Georgia can collect signatures, and that's hugely important to making sure that people who are in DeKalb County, who will be directly impacted from where Cop City will actually be built, are allowed to participate in trying to stop this and have this be put on the referendum. So they can go to those places. They can learn more about the organizational work that we do. We are a community-based organization. We do work around not only police violence, but we do work against gentrification. We do work on stabilizing working class and poor Black communities. Our politics is steeped in the tradition of Black radical organizing in this country. And they can learn more about us at that website also.
Terrific. So encourage everyone to go to that website and figure out ways that make sense to you, consistent with what's going on in your community, those corporate agents that may be local, or if you can't do nothing else, then make a donation to community movement builders. I see a question here. What again, you touch on all of I know so much of this, but here's one. What anti-democratic realities are being exposed in Atlanta so far by the concerted efforts to create Cop City by certain elected officials, interests, media, and others, that has really been sort of brought up and for what they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that this movement has exposed, something that's called the Atlanta Way. And the Atlanta Way is basically a closed door or behind doors, not publicly discussed deal making between corporations and public officials on how things get built in Atlanta and how things move in Atlanta. The idea of Cop City was not something they were supposed to have. They were supposed to have town halls about public discussion. This was something they thought they were going to usher through without a fight or a struggle at all. They had basically already made the deal. The deal was to take a piece of land, right, a forest, which was promised to an adjacent working class Black community. When I say promised to, what I mean is that that community was promised, and there were plans already drawn up that that forest would remain intact, that it would be used for the pleasure and benefit of that surrounding community, that there would be playgrounds, walking trails, campsites, hiking trails, that all of that would stay there. That forest itself helps prevent the flooding that happens in Southeast Atlanta, that happens on terrible rain days or storms, right? All caused by climate change. All of that was thrown out the window, no discussion, no debate, no asking of anybody in the community of what their needs and desires were. This was presented as something that would be a morale lifter for police. We understood that, again, within the time frame in which it was brought out, to be something that would be beneficial for pushing back against movements and uprisings against police violence. And 90% of those arrested in Atlanta, even though we only make up now 49% of the population, 90% of those arrested are of Black people in Atlanta. That this would be the continuation of over-policing of Black people in Atlanta as they were pushed out of Atlanta, working class and poor people, but particularly working class and poor Black people, who used to make up 60% of the city, but now only make up 49% because they can no longer afford to live in the city. That these measures were undemocratic on their face, that they were a private-public partnership, which wasn't agreed to by the public at all. For the first time in the history of policing, we're about to have a nonprofit corporation, a private corporation, control the training of a municipal police force. They are going to control the training. They're being paid by corporations who will directly impact what the training can consist of. In addition to the largesse that the city is giving, $67 million. So this all the way through has been something that's been pushed through by corporations without public backing, without public knowledge for most of it, with tie-ins and sneaky parts of the deal that only got exposed not by corporate media who have been in favor of this, but by grassroots media who, through public records requests or open record requests, I should say, expose the ideas of the Atlanta Police Foundation in terms of where its money would come from, how much of it would come from the city, and even expose the fact that there was a task force by the Atlanta Police Department, the DeKalb County Police Department, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Homeland Security, a task force which was thinking through how to bring domestic terrorism charges against organizers and activists and how to criminalize the movement to stop Cop City. We found all of that out, not through mainstream media, but through grassroots media. So the connections between the corporate media, these private corporations, and those who basically carry out their will, the politicians, has been exposed and has shown the undemocratic process of how things work here in Atlanta and work throughout this country in cities that we all live in.
An insidious relationship there, and the privatization or corporatization certainly is something that we at Move to Men try to focus and lift up, and that there's Exhibit A. Well, it's not even A, it's quadruple Z, and then some. So at this point, I'd like to bring on Cole Bennett. He is from Atlanta. He is currently a fellow at Move to Amend, working with us. Has been doing some canvassing himself in collecting signatures, and he'd like to share a few questions and make a couple comments about what's going on. Cole.
Hi, everybody.
Greetings.
Greetings on behalf of myself and Move to Amend. I would like to say welcome, Kamau, and thank you so much for spending your time with us and talking about this stuff. I know you're probably a busy man. I live in Atlanta. I've lived in Atlanta my whole life. I am about to start my third year of law school at Georgia State. I work part-time in a law firm that is in the 191 building, which is the same building that the Atlanta Police Foundation is in. I've seen firsthand, I would say, a lot of different aspects of this movement. And I just want to say that I've been very impressed, not only with just how well organized everything is, but how that's grown and how you spoke to it a little bit before, and I really enjoyed what you said about the diversity of tactics and how the reality is both sides, and in this case it is both sides. It is very kind of cut and dry, one against the other. On both sides, there's a diversity of tactics used. I've been very impressed not only by the movement itself, Stop Cop City, its organization and how well put together I think it is, but also just the city of Atlanta in general. I think we've really come together, and Atlanta and Georgia in general have become a political hotbed. And I think it's a very worthwhile struggle, and a very I don't think often you get a situation that is as kind of cut and dry as this, of the kind of work and solidarity that you would like to support and uplift, and the kind of obstacles that are in the way. And so I again just wanted to thank you and thank everybody involved in the movement. I just wanted to talk about a little bit about some of the repression tactics used against protesters, and an overall narrative of framing protesters and people that were charged with domestic terrorism as this kind of out of town, it's semi-coordinated effort. And just personally linking, again, this, I studied international security and counterterrorism at UGA. And, I think beyond all the other ways that this is, relevant in all of our lives, I think that alone, slapping protesters and citizens exercising their rights with domestic terrorism charges should be eye-opening for, not only residents of Atlanta, residents of Georgia, but, everyone in the entire country and beyond. Can you speak a little bit about those repression tactics as kind of scare tactics to dissuade political action, as well as how that kind of factors into this, not only against out-of-towners, but also against in-towners as well. And I can also speak to that as well. But your thoughts on this, on the repression tactics in this narrative of out-of-towners coming in and becoming involved.
No, definitely. And quickly, the outsider as sort of outside agitator commentary by the officials, the Atlanta police again, the mayor himself, and the governor is basically been the language that they've employed to criminalize the organizers in the Stop Cop City movement. So I've said in prior occasions that basically what we have is the city of Atlanta adopting the language of Southern segregationists, right? And the strategies and tactics of Southern segregationists, where they label people who are protesting as outside agitators. The same folks who tell you that they support Dr. King, how Dr. King represents the Atlanta, or how even in this Cop City project, in their original videotape of sort of highlighting what it was, they have several pictures of Dr. King as part of someone who would be endorsing a police training center that would be abusing his people. So even that's ridiculous on its face. But I say that to say is that they adopt the language, strategies, and tactics to stop organizers and criminalize organizers and make other folks scared to be an organizer. And that was done early on. It has instances. There was a raid of a music festival where the police went in and they checked the IDs of the folks before they decided to arrest them. Anybody with a Georgia ID, they let go. People who had out-of-state licenses, they arrested and charged them with domestic terrorism. Again, creating the idea that the movement against Cop City is all about people coming from other places as opposed to an indigenous movement or a movement of longtime residents and organizers and activists and environmentalists, civil rights workers, voting rights workers, pastors, and the rest of it across the gamut. It's been the core of the work that's been done has been done by people here in Atlanta who've lived here for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and who were born here, right? But what they like to paint is a picture of folks coming in from the outside to disrupt things that they're trying to build. And that's been part of their narrative or their propaganda to the outside public, which we should say the corporate media, the local corporate media in particular, has done the job of basically reprinting press releases from the police or the city or the governor without much commentary or without any context whatsoever. And so that's been a strategy that they've employed almost since the beginning. We should be clear that since the beginning of this movement, they've done things to break up protests. They've arrested people, they've charged people. And when they saw that the movement was not going away, they stepped up those tactics through the task force that I spoke about earlier and through the heightened charges of domestic terrorism as ways to scare people from participating in organizing against Cop City.
Absolutely. And going off of that, you talked about how most of the work has been done by residents of Atlanta, and as someone that has closely followed the movement and tried to be as involved as I possibly can, gathering signatures for the petition to get it on the ballot. Can you briefly speak to some of those efforts taken against in-towners and also how that how I think there's a lot of optimism in the movement right now coming off of the recent court victories, extending the petition deadline and who can gather signatures. But if you have any I was wondering if you had any brief thoughts about just more about this almost grasping at straws method that how that what challenges I think that you would say are with dealing with that, and that you as a movement builder have learned to kind of deal with, or any strategies that you have to maybe also use everything within your power and resources to achieve positive change, whatever that means to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think we saw early on that, obviously, one, the city has tremendous resources. The state has tremendous resources. Obviously, the power of the police they have tremendous resources to push back against Cop City, against the Cop City organizing and activism that's been going on. One of the things that we did early in terms of trying to fight back, I think, is to define what Cop City was. And even the name Cop City was something that came out of the organizing that said that we need to create a narrative of what's taking place so that we don't allow the city and the county and the police to create one that gets into people's heads. And so early on, people were all about making sure that this got labeled exactly what it was. Not a police, a sort of a nebulous police training center or benign police training center, but basically a playground for the police, where they would learn tactics and strategies to stop movements and, again, to over-police communities. And we had the information from them themselves that showed us that. The largesse of the so-called training center, the urban warfare tactics, to talk about military grade and paramilitary training. All of those things allowed us to discuss and talk to people around what was happening here. And so we got out in front of this issue so that we made sure that we weren't playing strictly defense, knowing that our adversary was far more powerful and had far more powerful tools, even if they didn't necessarily use them, because they thought at first, when I say use them, they didn't think they would have to create a narrative message, because they brought into the idea that whatever they said, they were so used to the Atlanta way of whatever they say goes, that they didn't think there would be an opposition that would rise up and do the work that's been done to try to stop this from happening. And so that's where we caught them off guard. Whereas they now, just today, they did a press conference, again, attempting to link the organizing and activism and diversity of tactics to organize some terrorist activities where they're trying to offer $60,000 in reward money for folks to try to rat on folks from the movement. These are the acts of desperation, but they're also the acts that they can afford to take because they have so much power. And so I'll wrap with this part. Even if, for us, Cop City is obviously a huge deal, but the most important thing that's happening right now in terms of this movement building is the infrastructure that is being built to say, we're not going to stop at Cop City. We're now challenging the actual Atlanta way of doing business by creating a diverse range of organizers, activists, and as I said before, voting rights organizations, people who are doing this referendum. These tactics have allowed, the referendum in particular, have allowed people to get involved who wouldn't have got involved in marches and demonstrations and town halls, but who still have a bigger belief than someone like I do in the political system, and who use that system to let's say, put their voice out there. For them to be able to sign on to a referendum and to be able to vote on this is a very powerful tool that is going to be used to help build a larger movement to say that the Atlanta way is going to be dead. Whether Cop City gets built right now or not, the Atlanta way is really what our huge fight is, because we cannot allow corporations and developers to continually use this city as a playground and push out working class and poor people.
Absolutely. And, Greg, or, maybe this, if Jenny wants to tackle this or Alfonso wants to tackle this question, but beyond and in tandem with gathering signatures in the petition movement, I know I, for a while, was searching for ways that I could get involved, and I've found places here and there. But Kamau, what resources would you recommend, or that are in place for people that are looking to get involved with the movement and maybe don't know what way, shape, or form that might take? Where might they be able to go, or what can they look at to figure out how they may be able to contribute to, like you said, to this, very kind of multi, it's an effort on multiple fronts. There might be different ways. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, votestopcopcity.com, I believe, is the website where folks can jump in and get involved with the petition drive, with post-petition drive, if there is a way to for folks to get involved with the actual campaign once this gets on the ballot, as long as it's not knocked off by the city trying to appeal the current decision by a judge. You just put up the Stop Cop City Solidarity. There's there's several different spaces that folks can jump into. Everything from doing, again, direct actions, civil disobedience, town halls, marches, podcasts like this. We just continue to encourage people to do what makes sense for them, to explore their own politics, their own choices, their own ways of acting and challenging, let's say, civil society, or challenging a dominant narrative that the only ways that society develops is through corporate largesse. That they should just look through the multiple ways we've tried to do that. Go to some of these websites, some of the social media pages, find where that makes sense for them, what feels comfortable for them, then begin to slowly challenge yourself on the larger levels of how do you actually enact change. What is it that you are willing to do? Are you willing to take an arrest? Are you willing to go to a rally? Are you willing to participate in marches? Are you willing to help take your time and develop town halls or do petition drives? There's so many ways in which people have used their talents, their everyday skills. We've had different lawyers involved, obviously, in lawsuits. There's so many ways that, from the beginning to where the struggle was to where we are now, where we now have organizations both nationally, internationally, and across the state of Georgia who are participating in ways that I think at the beginning of the struggle, they didn't know where they would participate. But now we have sort of a full-fledged struggle to stop Cop City and people participating from all different vantage points.
Great. Hey, thanks, Cole. And we're going to pivot back now.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kamau. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Going to pivot back to Jenny. We want to respect people's time. We said we would keep this to an hour. We started 5 minutes late, so hopefully people can hang around for a few more minutes, and appreciate all that has been contributed thus far. One other resource out there that one may find information as well as ideas and other ways to get involved is copcityvote.com. I think at some point that link will be put up on the screen. So I want to turn it back now, back to Jenny.
Hey, thank you so much, Kamau. And very important conversation, very important work. Like I said at the beginning, I think this is the most important thing going on in the nation right now because it's where everything intersects. So thank you and all of the rest of Atlanta for what you're doing to challenge corporate power and their mouthpieces. I hope everyone's enjoying the conversation so far. It's been really inspiring and eye-opening, excuse me, and I'm truly honored to be here with you all today. Before we wrap things up, I want to talk about something that's incredibly important too, something that can have a huge impact for the better. And I'm talking about the We the People Amendment, HJR 54, as it is its current rendition in the 118th Congress. This amendment makes clear that a corporation is not a person. It shouldn't have constitutional rights, and that money is not a form of free speech. If you agree, we ask that you sign and share the Move to Amend petition, which you can sign by going to the link that will be coming on your screen right now. Alfonso Sonata, our tech guru, thank you so much for all you're doing. He recently went to, he's one of our national co-directors, and he recently had the opportunity to go and visit some congressional offices in DC, and they were seriously impressed. Alfonso shared with them the extensive list of constituents like you, all amazing folks who support the We the People Amendment. Just as the petition is being used in Atlanta, this is a way to build and show power in the numbers of people who support the amendment, and also ending the desecration of the Weelaunee Forest and building the Cop City. Your voices matter, and together we're creating the political will to make that difference. And, this is where you come in. We just need you to help keep pushing forward by building that momentum. Again, we ask you to sign the Move to Amend petition. Your signature really counts, and the link appears is on the screen, movetoamend.org/motion. Also, I know times can be tough, but if you can, please consider supporting the movement financially. Your support is critical for the fight to get the We the People amendment passed. Move to Amend is funded by grassroots donations from real people like you. We're committed to maintaining our independence and our integrity, which is why we need your support. I don't know why I'm stumbling over my words. Every dollar makes sense. Help us continue this work and to ensure that all of our voices are being heard loud and clear. That's not all. We're grassroots at our core, which is why we believe in collective action. I want to encourage all of you to join our lobbying efforts. No experience is necessary. Experienced citizen lobbyists will guide you, help you every step of the way. Together, we can make a powerful impact and bring about the change that we desperately need. So sign up on the link that's appearing on your screen, movetoamend.org/118 campaign. It's not about us, not just about us and our democracy. It's about uplifting and supporting those who stand up for our environment. Our forest defenders are out there. They're fighting for our planet every day. So let's show them some love and support. Please, again, check out Community Movement Builders, Inc., Kamau's organization that he's working with. It's an amazing organization that's doing incredible work for the community. They could use our support too, and every little bit goes a long way. So just as a quick recap, sign the Move to Amend petition. Support our work financially if you can. Join our lobbying efforts and uplift the forest defenders at Stop Cop City and the Community Movement Builders, Inc. And before we end, I want to extend again a huge thank you to our distinguished speaker, Kamau Franklin, for joining us today, for his insights. You truly are inspiring and enlightening. And of course, I want to thank my fellow co-hosts for making the live stream such a success. We're going to sign off for now, but remember, our journey doesn't end here. Let's keep this momentum going, keep sharing, keep supporting, keep loving, keep fighting for the democracy we all deserve. And if you're watching the recording on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, and you have any questions, share those in our comments, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks again for tuning in.
And this recording, right? This recording will be available.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
At some point.
Thanks again for tuning in, folks. We'll see you next time.
Read the Constitution, there seems to be some type of confusion. I thought it said the people were the institution and not the corporations that simply want to use them. The truth is currently a fusion of corporate loot and our government that is outright abusive. People need change, the state it refuses. They're saying we're mistaken, well show us where the proof is. They control the media, movies and the music, and determine where supplies of the water and food live. We need a strategy, here is a solution. Build a movement to give our rulers improvements. An infusion of human to counteract the hubris that has our ecosystem near useless and our youth pissed. The founding fathers were flawed, but they knew this, and they gave us the tools to move with. Let's use them. Move. Corporations are not people. Money is not speech. Men fact, it's the root of all right now. And it's time to take to these streets. Move. Corporations are not people, dude. Money is not speech, man. In fact, it's the root of all right now. So get on out of your seats. Citizens United is the lie. Corporation doesn't know life, nor does it die. Profits from the 100 richest fictions alone in 1 year can make all of poverty gone. The Republicans are lost. Democrats bought. Most American people have forgotten that we fought for healthcare, education, services, and safety. It wasn't kindness, it was war that ended slavery. Not advocating violence, I am saying that lately a lot of folks is dying in ways that seem shady. A lot of students is hiding from debt that they can't beat and asked to be excited about a future they can't see. It's not a climate crisis, it's a corporate crisis, because a corporation can never know what life is. Only a human can. What's the solution then? Amend the Constitution or it's revolution, man? Ooh. Corporations are not people, dude. Money is not speech, men. In fact, it's the root of all right now. To us to educate and to reach. Ooh. Corporations are not people, dude. Money is not speech, men. In fact, it's the root of all right now. Side of the fence, you find your feet. Hip-hop never died, the corporation stole it and told us with bonus that we never owned it, they just loaned it out for the moment. It's a policy and culture matrix. When corporations shape it, only the prophets hold it sacred, though they stole to make them. We don't have the convenience of giving up. Gotta swallow all of the real, even if it comes from sippy cups. It's not a matter of political correctness, it's a matter of having the knowledge of what respect is. You can't defend humanity without joining it. This is our responsibility, let's stop avoiding it. Instituting love as a practice and overcoming the fascists to achieve the democratic, economic, and ecological collapse. I am not being neurotic, I simply offer the fact. We the people are under a monster's attack. It's time to rise, open the eyes, and take our democracy back. Ooh, corporations are not people. Ooh, money is not men. In fact, it's the root of all right now. We will not admit defeat. Corporations are not people. Money is not speech, men. In fact, it's the root of all right now.